Live from SABC studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this week's first edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko. On the show tonight, another mayor bites the dust as the ANC DA battles for the control of metros escalates. We speak to DA Federal Chairperson Helen Zille before our panel looks deeper into the attendant issues. We'll start here. At least 5 people have died in a mass shooting in Marian Hill, west of Durban. For the latest, we cross live to SABC News reporter, and that's Simpiwe Makanya. Simpiwe, good evening. Give us an update. What happened? Do we know yet? And who was involved?
Indeed, Vuyo, at about 4:30 this afternoon, members of this community where we are have told us that a group of armed men, started terrorizing this community of, Marian Hill, shooting and killing 5 civilians. And of course, one of those who was shot has since been taken to hospital where he is, receiving medical attention. The problem of mass killings, Vuyo, in KwaZulu-Natal is really giving the members of the SAPS a hard time, if one may put it that way. Because if you'd recall that at the beginning of this month, we had another mass, killing where 4 people were shot and killed at the KwaMashu men's hostel. But to talk about this particular incident, Vuyo, I'm joined by Colonel Robert Netshiwunda, who speaks on behalf of the South African Police Services here in KwaZulu-Natal. Colonel, thank you very much for your time. Perhaps if you could just tell us what the police know so far about this incident.
What we have gathered so far is that at least 3 gunmen came to the scene just behind me. It's a vehicle workshop where 3 guys were here and they were all shot. 2 were fatally wounded and 1 was rushed to hospital. It's also reported that the same suspects proceeded to another vehicle workshop just across the road, where they found 3 people working and shot all of them dead. And one of those who died is also the owner of that workshop. Even the first crime scene, one of the deceased, the owner of the workshop.
Are police following any leads at this particular moment?
Yes, we are. A team has already been dispatched to locate the suspects, because when the motive is unknown, you go all out. You try and find information as soon as possible to try and close the routes wherever they are. But safe to say, this thing has just
Okay, that line giving us problems here, but we'll bring you an update as soon as Simpiwe is, of course, able to give us more details from that conversation that he was having there with the spokesperson of the police in KwaZulu-Natal. To this now, Gauteng DA leader Solly Msimanga says the coalition in the capital city, Tshwane, is still intact. Executive Mayor Randall Williams today tendered his resignation with immediate effect ahead of a motion of no confidence against him. The ANC and the EFF in Gauteng have a newly formed voting relationship, and they hope to use that to remove the DA from power in the province's municipalities.
Another DA mayor in Tshwane has failed to complete a term of office, just like Solly Msimanga and Stevens Mokgalapa. Randall Williams has vacated his office. His tenure was marked by controversy over allegations of tender manipulation, undue influence in appointing a service provider to the municipality, and 10 billion rands in irregular expenditure as reported by the Auditor General. DA leader in the province, Solim Simanga, says the coalition is still strong and a new mayor will be agreed upon in the coming days.
It's part of the conversations that we've had to then say, look, are things that you will be able to then take forward. There is a need for a complete turnaround strategy. There is a need to ensure that following COVID and, the loss of the economic growth that has, really crippled the ability of municipalities, not only Tshwane, but municipalities across South Africa, from generating and also being able to collect revenue. And therefore, then also meaning that the services that they're able to then provide to the residents is somehow also now hampered. And this is why we have said that for that turnaround strategy to happen, perhaps, he will do well being on the side and then getting somebody and also getting the coalition, behind somebody again that will be able to then drive the turnaround strategy that we want to implement in the city of Tshwane.
The ANC has bemoaned the state of Gauteng metros under the DA-led coalition. Many are failing to pay service providers. In Tshwane, municipal buses had to be parked due to a lack of diesel. And in Johannesburg, suppliers took back their vehicles due to non-payment.
The DA has not only destroyed Tshwane with an unaccounted 10 billion bill, they've removed all the financial muscle of a once dynamic Johannesburg municipality and Ekurhuleni. This Lekgotla has once more taken a firm decision. Wherever the DA exists, it must be removed from power.
Lusufi says the party's new coalition partners and the EFF will try and take the capital city from the DA-led coalition.
We call on the DA not to further postpone the inevitable in Ekurhuleni and immediately relinquish their minority power and allow the majority to govern that municipality. No amount of court-wasting tactics will save them. Their time is up. We are ready to take over. As we prepare ourselves for Tshwane and other municipalities, we are proud that together with our coalition partners, we will be in a position to deal with these matters. In dealing with these issues, people must understand we want to put the interest of our people, not our political interest.
Coalition governments in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng are now seeing major instability due to new alliances between the ANC, PA, EFF, NFP and other minority parties. Samkele Masego, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, here's all what Randall Williams, the mayor of Tshwane, would say about his resignation.
Today, I am formally resigning as the executive mayor of the city of Tshwane as of midnight this evening. To have served in this role has been one of the greatest honors of my life. There is no greater privilege, I believe, than to have been chosen to public office to represent my fellow citizens. One of my core goals as executive mayor has always been to ensure the stability of the multi-party coalition in Tshwane.
Randall Williams on his resignation. Joining me on the line now is the chairperson of the DA's Federal Executive, Helen Zille. Helen, good evening. Thanks very much for your time.
It's a pleasure for you. Good evening, and good evening to the viewers.
Well, the mayor there didn't give us didn't tell us why he has decided to do what he has just done.
Well, the key point he made in his statement and what he's just said on your television screen now is that we are very committed to the coalition there, and he believed it was in the best interests of the stability of the coalition if he stepped back.
Why are you able to tell us more? Because I think he and his party owe it to the people of that municipality to tell them what actually happened, what is behind this decision?
It was Randall's decision, and he set it out fully in his statement. He said that he inherited a city from the ANC administration, the ANC's provincial administration, with a 4 billion rand deficit. It was absolutely enormously challenging to try and turn that around. With the enormous challenges he faced, he gave it his best shot, and he thinks that for the stability of the coalition and to ensure that the ANC and EFF are kept out, he wanted to step back. It was his decision, and it was his determination as to how he would present it to the public, and that's what he did.
So he's basically giving in, says, I can do this. I can do what I promised to do.
No, the bottom line is this. If you want to interview him, please interview him, but I'm not going to put words into his mouth. He has issued a full statement. You are at liberty to present it on your channel, and he believes it was in the best interest of Tshwane and himself and his future to take a step back, and that is what he's done. And we've thanked him very much for the enormous effort and the enormous amount of work he put into that job while he was there.
So he wasn't pushed. No one leaned on him. No one either forced him or persuaded him to resign in the interests of the party.
It was his decision. And you've seen what happens when people don't want to take that decision. That is what happened with Patricia de Lille. When her caucus had a vote of no confidence in her, she refused to go. And that was a very unpleasant, dragged out affair. So Randall Williams had a very different approach. And he proffered his resignation, took his own decision, and he issued his own statement.
Does that mean that he has lost the confidence of his caucus, hence?
There hasn't been any vote of no confidence in him in his caucus, but it is common cause that there was going to be a vote of no confidence in the council in the coming week.
But I mean, would his caucus not have rallied behind him in
yes,
the event?
His caucus would have. His caucus probably would have, yes.
Mm-hmm. So why
but
then
as you know,
would
we don't have a majority in Tshwane. We don't have a majority in any of the Gauteng metros. That's the problem. If people are going to split their vote amongst all kinds of small parties, then the DA is not going to have a stable majority to be able to govern well and give people the true blue difference.
Now, you would have heard the chairperson of the ANC in Gauteng from the insert we played earlier by Samkele Masego saying that they're forging ahead with their plan to oust the DA where you are in charge at the moment. Are you going to try and counter that? In other words, are you going to put up a fight as the DA, as Solim Simanga suggests?
We always put up a fight. We don't go and lie down in front of the ANC. And it's rich to hear that coming from Panyaza Lesufi, when every single time the ANC steps out of government, they leave an unholy mess, which is almost impossible to fix, and certainly impossible to fix in one term. The reason why we're fighting so hard in Ekurhuleni, for example, is not to hold on to power at all costs, but just to prevent the extreme abuse of officials, deployed cadres, who are doing things that no official should have the power to do, that they don't have the power to do. And the court judgment today was scathing about the deployed cadres who masquerade as objective and professional officials in Ekurhuleni. It's a complete disgrace. And that is what you should be exposing to your viewers, what the ANC does in government. I was very lucky when I took over Cape Town in 2006 from the ANC. The ANC had already started breaking the city, but they hadn't broken it entirely, and it was much easier to fix. When you take over a city that's been under ANC rule for 25 years, it's almost impossible to fix and very, very difficult to fix in one term. So it's a big challenge, and it's really rich to hear the ANC that has destroyed every single government it has ever been in. It is very rich to hear them say that they're going to undermine the will of the voters, kick the DA out wherever we govern, and bring back corrupt government to those metros.
Well, if you're not about to roll over and die, so to speak, what then is going to be your plan? Because you've already lost allies in Action SA, for example.
Well, I don't think that Action SA is going to vote for the ANC in Tshwane. And if they do, they'll be dead. So, you know, I'm not sure whether we've lost the allies in Tshwane. They must decide how they want to vote. But you see, voters must also get it. They want the DA difference, as they see in the Western Cape and many of the other municipalities like Midvaal and Mgeni, when we govern with an outright majority. They must give us an outright majority. They can't give us 26% of the vote as they did in Johannesburg and expect us to govern. 26% is too little to be able to put together a stable government. And I hope that the voters have learned what these very large, unwieldy, multi-party coalitions mean. They mean ungovernability and instability. And that has to be the key lesson.
But to what extent, though, do you also take responsibility for how you've managed these coalitions?
We manage them jointly. There's a coalition management team, and we all take joint responsibility for how we manage them.
But have you at any point reflected on how, on the part that you've played in how these coalitions are managed and run? Have you been able to reflect on things you could perhaps do differently? Because speaking to Mpho Phalatse recently, after she lost the. She was ousted as mayor of the city of Johannesburg. She seemed to think that there could be a different, let's not say better perhaps, but a different way of managing these situations, which clearly or implicitly from what she was saying, she differed with the leadership of the party on how the situation could have been managed.
Yes, indeed. The DA is a party where we have open discussions. We reflect all the time on the best course of action to take. And a very clear example is Mpho's view in Johannesburg, which the federal executive did not agree with. Mpho's view in Johannesburg was that we should do business with the EFF and court them for their votes and go into some kind of arrangement with the EFF. And we didn't want to do that. We took a very considered, reflective decision that would be a disaster, and we did not go into a coalition with the EFF. But we had lots of debates about that because some people thought we should, and we had a very firm view from the leadership perspective of the Democratic Alliance that we were not going to do that.
Was that, or were those the only objections that you had? Because I'm hearing this for the first time because she was not able to talk about it the last time she was on the show because an instruction had gone out that only the leadership of the party would talk about it. So was the EFF issue the only one?
She said in many places, she said in many places that she thought we should be flexible enough to do a deal with the EFF over the weekend as well. And we won't do that. We've been there before and it was a complete and utter disaster. And so, as you say, we are a reflective party. We are a learning organization. We learn from experience. And we're not going anywhere near the EFF again to make any formal deals with them. So we had that debate in the party, and it was the federal executive was absolutely unanimous that we are not going to do any deals with the EFF.
What I was trying to ask was whether the EFF question was the only issue that you had. What about your patriotic alliances, for example?
Well, we have issues all the time. I mean, managing coalitions is extremely difficult. And we have meetings many times a week and discussions almost every day about aspects of the coalition. And obviously, in the DA, we understand the concept of conflict of interest. And we understand that when you're a mayor, you obviously want to finish the job, and you obviously want to stay in there and get it done. But the DA has to be the custodian of the values of the party and the principles of the party and the policies of the party. And that is why our mayors never do the negotiation around coalitions, because there's an inherent conflict of interest between holding on to a position and negotiating a set of values and principles. And so we have that very clear distinction, but we also have a lot of interaction with our people in government while we are negotiating these things. Now, the Patriotic Alliance is a very good example of that. The Patriotic Alliance is very open about why it wants certain portfolios. It wants to get to the entities, to the tenders, to the contracts, where it's possible to do the deals. Gayton McKenzie's never hidden that, never at all. And that's what he wanted to do. And we know what he did before. And we know exactly how economic development can be fleeced in the city of Johannesburg. And we weren't prepared, with a gun to our head, to go into an arrangement that wouldn't be any better than the ANC, which would be patronage, looting, siphoning of taxpayers' money, not on the DA's watch. And we knew that we were not going to be able to manage Gayton McKenzie because he was very clear about what he wanted to do. We've seen what he's been doing in Beaufort West, in many other places. And we said we cannot in a coalition in which the DA has the mayoralty.
Is it your considered view that all Paul Palatse actually wanted to do was hold on to the position of mayor?
No, I don't. That's not my considered view at all. When one starts a job, one wants to finish a job, obviously. I've been a mayor as well, and the coalition agreement was negotiated without any reference at all to me, and that was correct and that was right. Obviously, when you start a job, you want to finish it. There's no question about that. And it is incumbent on you to have a plan and to want to see it through. But that's why we have checks and balances in the DA. And that is why we listen to each other. And that is why we talk to each other every single day.
Well, she has now set her eyes on the position of leader of the party. And speaking of things she said, or repeated, maybe I should say, this past weekend, one is that she believes she has more experience than many people who may have 20 or more years, or who think they have more experience than her. I'm keen to know what you think of those kinds of statements from her.
She's completely at liberty to make those statements. That is her presentation of her manifesto. And in the DA, we run open contests. And if she says that her experience is worth 20 years or what other people have got, she's completely at liberty to make that statement. And the delegates to Federal Congress are at liberty to evaluate it completely.
She also thinks your messaging is wrong, and for the DA to move forward, there has to be a leadership change. Do you agree?
Look, I don't want to get involved in a leadership debate. I'm not running for leadership, and this is not a leadership debate. My job is to chair the administration of the party and align its political arm with its administrative arm. And that is what I spend every single day of my life doing, from early morning till late at night. I'm not a candidate for the leadership of the party. I'm doing my job, and I can assure you that the Congress will happen punctually, fully prepared, with an open and fair contest for the leadership. And everyone who wants to run for leadership will be able to present their manifesto and will be able to be adjudicated by the delegates to the Congress.
Would you support her if she was to ask?
It would be entirely wrong for me, in my position as responsible for the administration, to start backing any candidate. I'm not going to endorse any candidate at all.
Helen Ziller, thanks very much for your time.
The pleasure, Will.
She's the chairperson of the DA's Federal Executive, commenting, of course, on the back of that resignation by the mayor of Tshwane, who has decided to step down, of course, taking the opportunity to also ask about Mpho Phalatse and comments she made here on the show, but also in other interviews that she has done since. After the break, we hear from the ANC on what their plan is for not only Tshwane, but other Gauteng metros as well. ANC Gauteng chairperson Panyaza Lesufi says they are pressing ahead with plans to take over Tshwane with the help of coalition partners and the EFF. But how do they hope to achieve this, and by when? Lesego Makubela heads up the ANC's Information and Publicity Department in Gauteng. Good evening. Thanks very much for your time.
Good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to your listeners.
Well, first, perhaps your reaction to the mayor of Tshwane's resignation?
He did not resign. He's trying to run away. He's running away from what he could not explain. The Auditor General report, which is an adverse finding that has never been issued to any entity of government in the history of democratic South Africa, says that they falsified their finances, that they misrepresented the finances of the city to the Auditor General, that there's a 10 billion that they could not account for, that overall there's 30 billion that is almost reaching, that they cannot explain where this money is being spent, what it has done. I listened to to the leader of the party that the DA, Helen Zille now. He says that they inherited a mess. No, they did not inherit a mess. They inherited a well-run municipality in Tshwane under Sputla Ramkopa. And sometimes I begin to question the ability of some of the newsrooms who simply failed to go to the Auditor General report. The 2015-2016 Auditor General report says to everyone, that which they did not even contest, that Tshwane left, the mayor, when the ANC left Tshwane, it left them a surplus budget. It was not a deficit like she claims that there was a deficit. No, there was no deficit. It was a surplus budget when we left the city. And that's what the Auditor General statement of the 2015-2016 financial year says. That's when we left the city. And you would know that within the space of about 6 years, the DA has had about 4 mayors, and all of them left under a cloud. Disgraced. The first one was Solim Simanga, who left under a 12 billion corruption scandal. They had to remove him. He did not also resign. He ran away. The second one was a guy they fetched, a very clumsy, funny character joke that they had hidden in Parliament. They brought him in the city of Tshwane to become a mayor called Stevens Mokhalap. You know what happened with Stevens. He was caught with his pants down, literally, sleeping with the members of his mayoral committee, and who also tanked the city. Then after Stevens Mohalapa, there was a character who joined Action SA, Tau. He became a mayor, resigned as well after corruption scandals, went to Action SA even fired him. Then they went to Cape Town to outsource Randall, who came to the city of Tshwane and became a mayor. He lives now trying to run away because he cannot be able to explain why would they then submit falsified financial statements of the city. And that's why he has left. And we believe law enforcement agencies must pursue him. He will have to account for that mess that he has left. He will have to explain to the people of Tshwane what happened to that money.
But why do you think you lost the confidence of voters, of ratepayers, as the ANC, if you had a good track record?
There was no issue with the track record in government. It's evidence. Actually, if you want to see the mismanagement and the failures of the DA government, go to the city of Tshwane, go to the city of Johannesburg, go to the city of Ekurhuleni. The people in Tshwane still to this day ask us about Dr. Sputla Ramukhopa's administration, which had done well for them.
Yeah, but you've lost all the metro. I mean, you should have...
The African National Congress is the only party that comes to the public and acknowledges its weaknesses. You would remember what happened when we lost the seat of government in Tshwane. There were internal differences, party rifts, and the community revolted and demanded that we bring Dr. Ramukhopa, Professor Ramukhopa, back as a mayor, and the divisions of the ANC at the time, and we were aware of it because we were students of Amilcar Cabral, who teaches us that we must mask no difficulties from the people, that we must tell no lies and claim no easy victories.
But what have you done?
We're not going to lie about the divisions that existed at the time.
But what have you done?
That's how we lost.
What have you done to restore the confidence of the people who felt they should no longer vote for you?
I need to explain your question, because the nexus of your question was saying that we were not voted for because of our track record in Ghana. That is not true. And I will not accept it. And you know it very well. We were removed because of the internal the battles within the ANC that played themselves to the public, which costed us. And it's the ANC that acknowledges it. And we came out and said, yes, we are aware. We mishandled the issue of a mayoral candidate in 2016, and it costed us dearly in the city of Tshwane. The ANC has come out very clear explaining that particular thing. We went to communities around Tshwane and we explained that particular issue. So it was not a merit.
But then how do you explain Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg, if that is the case?
If you look at what happened in Ekurhuleni, what happened in Johannesburg, even in Ekurhuleni in 2016, we ran Ekurhuleni through a coalition, because there were a lot of issues. There were issues of e-tolls, and at the same time there were issues of Ngandla. The ANC Provincial Executive Committee in Gauteng came out and said there is a research study that tells us this thing is costing us. And we are aware of it. And that's why with the performance, exceptional performance of service delivery, providing basic services to our communities by Mayor Pakstau in Johannesburg, which the residents of Johannesburg yearn for those days, Mayor Mzwandile Masina, which the people of Ekurhuleni still yearn for those days. I cannot overemphasize how people in Tshwane still yearn for the days of the ANC run municipality under Sputla Ramukhopa. Even an ardent critic of the ANC, John Robbie, arrived in one of the townships in Tshwane, in Atteridgeville, and tweeted that I never thought that there will be an ANC run municipality as clean as that. But now all our townships are dumping site. You know why? Because the city can't even afford to collect refuge. The city's finances are in total disarray that they do not even collect refuge. And people have now resorted to actually relieve themselves of the garbage by throwing it on the street and so forth, because the city spends weeks without collecting refuse bins here.
So what's your plan? Panyaza Lesufi says, together with your coalition partners and with the help of the EFF, you're forging ahead with taking back Tshwane and Ekurhuleni. But what's the plan? How are you approaching this?
Let me give you an example. Because the intergovernmental relation that exists between the provincial government and the cities or the municipalities is such that if the provincial government needs to provide certain services, you need the buy-in of municipalities. I'll give you a perfect example. We went and won a bid to build what we term a special economic zone. So Ford says we're going to actually manufacture, not assemble, manufacture certain types of cars here in South Africa. Government came, pledged money, everything. The city under the DA was supposed to do the most simple thing. provide
I was talking about
bulk services. Right?
No, I was talking about politically.
Yeah.
Manage. How are you planning to manage this process politically? Who are you talking to, what are the key tenets of whatever arrangement that you are going to get into?
Yeah, because your colleagues in the media never had stories in the weekend. They started now delving in publishing lies, right? The first thing that they say, no, this is the coalition of the ANC and the EFF. There's no such a thing. It's a coalition of everyone that is tired of how the DA has run down all these cities. Where in the city of Johannesburg, they were at the brink of almost not being able to pay salaries. They are not paying service providers. You know the challenges in Johannesburg. Where in Ekurhuleni, there are serious service delivery challenges. Where in Tshwane, the challenges are documented.
What I'm talking about
so
now,
we are speaking to everyone.
But what I'm talking about now is how you are approaching your conversations with your coalition or potential coalition partners, and what forms the basis of whatever agreements you may enter into.
Well, we're clear. We want to reboot, we want to reactivate service delivery in all the cities. But we are not like hyenas who are waiting to carcass around these municipalities that have been collapsed by the DA. All that brings everyone who supports us, who are, by the way, most of them were partners in the coalition agreements with the DA, who have come on the table and said, this is not taking our people anywhere. The DA has collapsed these municipalities, and therefore let's come together and reboot service delivery in these municipalities and make sure that at least the bare minimum services that are required by municipalities to be provided to the people or residents of all these cities, at least we must be able to achieve that. And that's what we're agreeing on. All of us agree on that, to say let's come together and collapse the malfeasance, the maladministration, the corrupt DA, which has literally ensured that it closes down historically black townships and prioritizes affluent white suburbs as it actually is its model. And they are unapologetic about it and how they do it.
You see, the reason I keep going back to this thing is because one of the difficulties some of us have been having with this coalition arrangements and what tends to happen is that we have very little understanding, of the anatomy of these coalition arrangements. What brings these people, together, what they agree on. In fact, beginning with the very first approach, when you go to a potential partner, you sit down and say, what, to achieve what, how. What happens if, It's those kinds of basic questions that we don't get answers to. This is what I'm trying to...
And that's what I've been trying to explain. I'm saying that these coalitions are not a merger of parties. This is a coalition of the like-minded that have realized, that have been in coalition with the DA, and realize that the DA has no plan, has no vision, it collapses the cities, and therefore we want to resuscitate it. We want to reboot, reactivate service delivery, and be able to start putting financial prudence in all these particular cities and deliver basic services. Something which the DA, the chaotic DA coalitions of bodybuilders has failed to do in all the cities. And therefore, that's what we're agreeing on. It's not a coalition of ideologies that we find each other ideologically, no. It's a coalition of everyone who's agreeing that let's rescue the city of Tshwane from total collapse. Let's rescue Johannesburg from total collapse. Let's rescue Mohale City. Let's rescue Ekurhuleni from total collapse and restore services so that our people in our communities are able to actually ensure that they receive the basic services. And that's our minimum program. And that's what brings us together on the table. Not that we like each other, not that after we agree that if ever we install this particular party or that party to lead this particular portfolio or a particular city, it means that we are friends. No, we have a minimum program to reboot, reactivate, and ensure that at the heart of the functioning of these cities is actually the people and the residents of these cities, and then we are able to work.
Have you agreed on any timelines for your conversations? And then secondly, have you put in place mechanisms, let's say, for things like if you happen to disagree or can't find one another on anything, what mechanism you then going to be able to use to either break deadlocks or manage things such that the ratepayers are not the ones who get to suffer because of instability and the changes that are made often to the leadership of these municipalities?
And I understand that question because you are tormented by the loose and chaotic DA coalition agreements, which have seen mayors change over time. We've led coalitions before as the ANC, many coalitions. I just gave you an example. We led the coalition from 2016 in Ekurhuleni until it completed a term. One mayor, the same mayoral committee, the same officials, until it completed the term. Its achievements are documented, and what it has done is documented. We led a successful coalition in Johannesburg, Vuyo, just here in Johannesburg. We removed Sehembe Mashaba. We placed the late Jeff Makubo, who only was replaced because he unfortunately succumbed to COVID-19. And then we replaced him with Mayor Jolidi Matongo, the late Jolidi Matongo. He was only removed because he passed on in a tragic car accident. There was no motion of no confidence against him, no. The very same partners allowed us to install the late Mpo, the late Comrade Mpo, who also passed on after having an accident. So we don't have a history of running chaotic coalitions. So that's why I'm saying your question is informed by having been tormented by these chaotic coalitions that are led by the DA, which are loose in nature. In our discussions with all parties that agree that we must unseat the DA from running these cities, we have difficult discussions. And I saw the media is trying to say that the ANC and the EFF have separate discussions, then they bring their discussion. No, it doesn't work like that. We discuss everything with everybody. We sit with everybody, we discuss everything, all the aspects of these coalitions, and we agree on issues that say to us, this will help us to restore order and everything like that. All the difficult issues that might emanate, we don't say, no, let's just put a person and then we'll discuss later. We discuss those things before we even go and place a motion of no confidence.
Well, thanks very much. He's the spokesperson and the head of communications and information for the ANC in Gauteng. Let's get some analysis now or some reflections rather, and we're joined by Dr. Thapelo Tselapedi, who's a lecturer from Rhodes University. Good evening. Thanks very much for your time, Dr. Tselapedi. Just your thoughts around starting with the resignation today by the mayor of Tshwane.
Hi, Will, and thank you for the invite. Look, man, I guess one can't be too surprised. The issue that recently came out from Tshwane was the matter of the unaccounted 10 billion by media accounts that was not somewhere found. So I think that's one problem, and I think given the coalition, it was always going to present a problem for the mayor and present a problem particularly for the Democratic Alliance and its image. It's unheard of, I guess, for the DA to have its own mayor, or at least under the administration, where that amount of money is lost or can't be accounted for. So I think given that, it definitely was quite difficult to carry the coalition under the DA, and something had to happen, at least to do damage control over the city of Tshwane. I would have expected in the resignation letter that he at least outline, some of the problems around that issue, but he didn't, and he just bowed out from the city. But yes, obviously, city of Tshwane is quite different from the other municipalities where there are coalitions. It is different dynamics there.
Do you think, though, Randall was pushed, or did he jump? What your take?
Look, man, like I said, I would think that the DA certainly had a conversation with him around that matter, and definitely it weakened their standing in the coalition agreements or arrangements there at the city of Tshwane. So I can't obviously say for certain whether he was pushed, but I think given the headline of the unaccounted 10 billion, certainly there must have been conversations with him around that.
Of course, I mean, the ANC has made no secret of the fact that they wanted him out, and I think that Auditor General report, gave them something to use. But Helen Zille is adamant that if he had stayed on, his caucus would still rally behind him. But he took a personal decision to walk away from it because of the enormity of the task that he had. He looked at it and felt that this was not something, or he was not going to make the kind of progress that he thought he would be able to make. Certainly not in the time that he had. Well, according to, I'm paraphrasing here, what Helen said earlier.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think whether, even with the support of the DA caucus in the council, the reality is that matter of the AG stretched and undermined the coalition arrangement there. I think it would have been very difficult for the DA to sustain it with that loss hovering over them. So I think it was a good decision, if indeed it was his decision, for him to resign for the betterment of the coalition arrangement. Because at the end of all of this, once you have programmatic agreements with all parties involved, there really shouldn't be any sort of jostling for power. But what we see now with this matter is that it was under his leadership that amount of money was accounted for. So it makes sense. It makes sense whether the DA was supporting him or not, for him to then recuse himself so that the coalition arrangement holds.
Now, just your thoughts, and this is something I asked Helen Zille as well earlier, on how, because I mean, she's adamant they are going to put up a fight. They're not about to roll over and die. Just your thoughts about something I asked her as well, just how the DA has managed these coalitions.
Look, I mean, the report that you get from the coalition partners is that the DA is arrogant, the DA tends to make decisions outside of its power, coalition partners, and that the DA tends to think that it knows best for everybody. So with that, I mean, I would not obviously be surprised if the DA putting its own candidate forward. But I think moving forward, the DA has to be very careful about just the tone of its engagements with coalition partners. And this is why I think partly, I guess, and this is not all of it, but I think part of the problem with coalitions is that on the part of the DA, they tend to speak in such a manner that it alienates the coalition partners, and they really need to think about how can they apply themselves differently. Because at least for the most part, what we've seen as well in the Nelson Mandela municipality and Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg, it has primarily really been driven around jostling for power in the coalition arrangement. Because if you have agreements that's programmatic, does it really matter about which party has the mayoral candidacy? I doubt.
Well, you have the ANC saying it has actually done well in managing coalitions, and once they take over these Gauteng metros, you're going to see some results because they are entering into these coalition arrangements with a program and being clear about what needs to be done, and everyone they have been talking to has bought into their idea of how they are going to run these coalitions, but also how they are going to do what needs to be done by way of service delivery. Do you?
I mean, when Mr. Herman Mashaba came into office in the city of Johannesburg, there was the issue of the billing crisis. As soon as he was gone, seemingly the billing crisis came back. In fact, he had managed to resolve that matter, and then it came back after him, taken over by the ANC. So, of course, one then has to wonder what sort of stability then the ANC at the local government are talking about when such instances are quite glaring. And I reiterate again, for me the issue is, once coalition partners can agree on a program that in this ward, in this vicinity, we're going to build a hospital, build a school, and so forth, why they need then to have one particular organization taking over as mayor? I think for me, in their own engagement, there's a loss of centralizing citizens in those municipalities, really.
From what you said very quickly, Dr. Tshwane, do you think, isn't there a case to be made for perhaps a different way, or new rules perhaps in managing these coalitions? Because this one comes today, and capitalizes on the boo-boos or mistakes or problems, of the other when people are talking. But then they move in, and as soon as they move in, they do pretty much what the people they would have ousted, would have been doing. And then you have this instability where, these councils, change, or mayoral committees change every, ever so often. But what this does is that the leadership, the people who are supposed to do the actual work in municipalities, take these orders from different people. They hardly ever focus on the work that they need to do, but rather on pleasing the political principals who are changing as often as we've seen.
Yes, I mean, this is why I think there must be some sort of guideline. I mean, for instance, I think with the initial coalition in the city of Cape Town when the ANC lost there, I think there was an understanding in the ANC that leave it, let the DA get to this coalition agreement. The other ones in which coalition partners agreed to have the mayoral position. Yeah. I think if political parties at the national level can agree that whoever is in control there as an outcome of coalition partner agreements should be left there, and that there should not be any jostling for power. So those sort of things, I think, at the party level should take place.
And that's exactly what I was trying to get the ANC spokesperson to speak to. But Dr. Tshwane, let me thank you very much for your time and insights this evening.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's show. To join us again tomorrow night, same time. Have a good night.